What's up, everybody? Derek Lambert here, host of MythVision podcast. As you know, I love stories. I love ancient stories and modern stories. And sometimes, I'll have these little campfire discussions, if you will, with people who've gone through similar things as we have with deconversion stories. They express their own experiences landing wherever they land. For example, tonight we're going to be talking to a gentleman who's had quite an interesting roller coaster, and I want to keep doing these. So I hope that you, as the audience who views this video and future ones, will show support and kindness to my guests and encouragement as they come forward and show courage in explaining their own stories and experiences so that you can relate to them, and maybe it'll help someone out there. I don't think it maybe will. I think it will. So tomorrow we'll be having, for example, someone who ended up leaving Christianity, but ended up in a different place of faith, somewhere else where they still believe, but they've left the harmful views they once held. Without further ado, I want to bring our guest on.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Andrew, you connected, you reached out. I sent the email, man. I was like, hey, everybody, if you're interested in telling your story and you have a deconversion story, something where you left a harmful religion, a harmful situation, and that could be all sorts of stuff, reach out. Andrew reached out. Did you think you reached out? You were like, hey, is this real or what? I mean, what were you thinking?
I did. I saw, I was scrolling through YouTube and it just came up as just in my feed. And I was like, you know what? I've been saying, like, I wish I had people I could talk to about this kind of stuff. And it just felt like this is my opportunity. Like, this is my chance. And so, of course, I responded. And so, yeah, here we are. It's pretty cool.
You and dozens others. Who Andrew is. Background.
Yeah, so my entire family is Catholic. Not just my immediate family, but extended family as well. Going back far generations. My family's has the roots in Mexico. So we're all Hispanic, and pretty much it seems to me, at least my experience growing up in El Paso, that every other family was about the same as far as having their heritage in being Hispanic and being Catholic. And so from the time I was little, I mean, some of my earliest memories, when you're a toddler, your parents, they start to teach you things, things like letters, numbers. But also for me, part of that was starting to learn about Bible stories. And the family I grew up in, we were very close. It was a small family, just me, my mom, and my sister. But my grandparents lived with us for probably the first 10 years of my life. And so we all lived in one house. And I shared a room with my grandparents.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So every night, when we would go to sleep, they were there. We had a bunk bed and we would all bunk up together. And part of our nightly routine was saying our prayers, going through Bible stories. They had bought me a little, it's like a little children's Bible. It's maybe about 100 pages. And it's a condensed, simplified version of the real thing. And they'll condense, for example, like Genesis into like 2-3 pages. It's got little pictures in there. Yeah. And so, that was some of my earliest memories of going to sleep and doing our prayers, the Hail Mary, Our Father, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And going through those stories, they would read them to me. And it was there since the very beginning.
You guys were close. I mean, a close-knit family. Many of my Hispanic friends, especially when I was living in Puerto Rico, for example,
oh, wow.
I lived there for 3.5 years, and there are a lot of families that will live all 14, 15 people house, big house, of course, yes. But everyone lives together and they're very tight. And so you had a pretty close relationship, not only with your family and your parents, but seemingly your grandparents, who probably are now much more mature in life. They take religion very seriously, and they instilled some of these principles of praying at night, reading your Bible. You got familiar with stories and stuff. Very Catholic. Did they have rosaries, the whole nine? I mean, it was a typical
We did, yeah. We had we had a rosary in the room that was hanging off like the bunk bed. Um, they, of course, just decorating, furnishing the house. They would hang crosses up. I mean, all the holidays. If it was Christmas, they had the nativity scene out. Easter, all sorts of stuff that they would decorate. And so yeah, I mean, it was pretty much the whole nine, whether it was a holiday or not, really. Yeah.
Now, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being, I mean, we're talking martyr. We're talking someone who literally is insane for the Lord, okay? And
Uh-huh.
then 1 being like only goes to a church when someone has a wedding and they don't even really believe.
Hmm.
Where on the scale from 1 to 10 would you possibly rate your mom and dad, your family, your sisters and brothers, and your grandparents? If you can go through and scale them based on your
Right.
perception.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So my mom was not nearly as I don't know, I guess rigid about it. I would put her as like a 5.
Okay.
And I would put my grandparents about a 7, 8, where it was a huge part of their identity, but it wasn't like everything to them. Like it wasn't I'm trying to think how to describe. But yeah, like a 7 or 8. But what's interesting about it though is I've gotten older and became an adult. I would put them now is at about a 9 each.
Hmm.
With as life has progressed and with the way things are right now in the world. But yeah, so that's how it was when I was young.
So yeah, okay. Mom, what about dad?
Oh, okay, so dad. Well, so my dad wasn't around, to be honest.
Okay.
My parents separated when I was 2, and so yeah, he like I even to this day it's like I'm barely even know him. So
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry if I went there, and
oh,
anything you
no
don't feel
worries.
comfortable with expressing or explaining,
Yeah, yeah, no worries. That's
this
all
is
good.
your story. Yeah, this is your story, bro.
Yeah.
And that goes for anyone who ever appears on the channel, of course. Wherever they're comfortable with going, that's what I prefer. So you're still a kid, and we titled this video kind of shocking.
Yes.
You're 4
Yeah.
years old. You're in a Catholic environment, a very devout Catholic environment, and
Yeah.
they have exorcists. They believe demons do dwell inside people and sometimes need a priest to come and exorcise the demon out. Um, what happened in your situation here, brother? I mean, fill me in. I'm shocked to
Yeah.
hear that a 4-year-old.
So this
Yeah.
is yeah. So I was baptized at 4, and the memory, because of course memories that long ago are so fun, memories from being that young, and just the preparation of the day. Somebody like, why are we doing this? Like, it was confusing in that I really understood from the stories, like, I guess is what. And so when she said that he's in, how is he, how is he in me? Because he's so bad. And I don't remember if anybody else answered that question of why we're here. Because they're trying to be real prompt and move you in, so that way they can kind of get you to, get you through the baptism. And so we go inside, and the Catholic Church, of course, like many of them, they're built in a way where the building itself is pretty beautiful. And so I remember being taken back at just how big it is. And there was nobody there but my family and the priests. Maybe if there was other people, I don't remember them. And so they told me, of course, ahead of time that like part of the baptism had to do with the holy water. And so I was
Mm.
curious, like, what is this holy water? And so the hallway that we're in, it's big, and there's it's like a big bowl, and the priest is there, and he's in his I think he was just in his white robes or whatnot. And when you're 4, you don't understand most of what they're saying, and it's so fuzzy I hardly remember it. But I just remember seeing the bowl and being like, that's holy water. I mean, it looks like any other bowl of water. And but they ended up, he did his blessing. I think he put water on my forehead, and that was pretty much it. And I came away from that, thinking like, oh, I'm gonna feel different because they're gonna wash the devil out of me. And there was nothing to it. So it was a little confusing. The experience, once it was all done and we had gone home, um, like in hindsight, as the years go by, and I wasn't 4 anymore, but still a little boy, like thinking about all that, I was like, this is crazy, because they're saying that inherently when we're born, the devil's in us, that we're born evil. And I guess that makes sense, because part of what you're taught is that you are a sinner, from the time that you're born. And so, it was just strange. It was
Yeah.
strange, because if he's in me, then I'm looking at all the other kids, like when I go to school, like, well, how many of them have not been baptized yet, and what if they still got the devil in them? And so it was yeah, it was weird. But yes, that was my first experience at a church, and that's how my baptism went. And yeah, and it's interesting, because thinking about it, like, it didn't scare me, it just made me very confused. And it brought up a lot of questions that would pretty much lead to questions down the line. Yeah.
So you're 4, you get baptized. How often did you guys go to the church? I mean, how often did you go to
Oh,
church
so
along those years?
yeah, so we would go pretty much every Sunday. Once I was old enough, because kids, they're a little rambunctious. I guess once they felt I was big enough and old enough where they could take me and I would behave and be able to sit still for an hour, I think I remember going regularly, probably when I was about 6, and we would go every Sunday. And it was at this Catholic church right down the street. So it was like the local church, and I would see, all the families, and for the kids that I went to school with. So I would see people, teachers. It was very interesting, because I'm used to seeing these people at school, but I'm seeing them at church. And on holidays too, we would go for like Easter, Christmas, and I remember like the Christmas Eve ones in particular, because I was so impatient. I remember thinking, like, I could be at home watching cartoons right now. There's good stuff on, and I'm here at church. But yeah, so we went very regularly, and that continued up until I was probably about 13. And we went pretty much mostly always with my grandparents. My mom, being a single mom, she worked a lot, and was also going to college. So most of my experience in church was with my grandparents and with my sister.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
you're 13, your grandparents, obviously close connection, are taking you to this religious place. And do you have any memories of things along the way? I mean, obviously you
Oh yeah.
still reflect to your baptism, but like, are there any weird memories that you have, or any strange things
Yes.
similar to what you had with the baptism that you'd like to tell us about?
Sure. So they put me in catechism when I was 8. I was in 3rd grade, and catechism is I mean, it's kind of, I guess, step 1 for really becoming. Well, I guess the baptism step 1, but step 2 is the catechism for being a confirmed Catholic. And so at this point, by the time I was 8, from reading the Bible stories, because this was a nightly routine where now I knew how to read from being in 1st, 2nd grade, at least basic stories. So my little children's Bible, I remember like Jonah and the whale was my favorite story, just because of the whale. But I remember asking questions. Like, for example, Genesis was always one that stuck out to me, and the story of the flood. And this is kind of where now I was old enough to kind of ask, like, why did God have to do the things that he did? Like, why did Adam and Eve have to be punished so harshly for eating an apple? Like, I know they were told not to do it, but this is a bit much. And then the same thing with as you go further into the story with Noah, and it's just like, well, God is displeased with all the people, so the only solution is we got to kill them all and flood the planet. And because I remember asking, like, oh, what do you mean a flood? Because when you say a flood to a little kid, they're like, flood, what do you mean? And so, and I remember, I think it was my grandma who was explaining, like, the whole water just washed over the whole planet, and everybody was wiped away. And I was like, well, what do you mean they're wiped away? And then she's like, well, they drowned. And then, at this point, like, I loved to go swimming, and I understood, like, well, that sounds awful. Like, you're telling me he drowned everybody? And I remember asking why, and the answer was always, well, they were bad people and they weren't listening to God, and so like he needed to do it. And it just didn't make sense because you're God. Like, how is there no other way that you can do something to bring these people around to being better? And I mean, clearly Jesus is trying in the New Testament. So what's the difference? Why is it Jesus tries so hard later? But because, they're one and the same, right? And so those were the first questions, is really with Genesis. And the flood is the one that really bothered me when that was explained. And there was just no justification for it. For me as a little kid, I'm just like, well, if you're God and you know everything and you can do everything, like, why can't you just snap your fingers and everybody listens now? But so the answers are, they are what they are. And I was put in catechism at 8, and it's a, it's kind of like an entry level teaching for the Bible and the theology and the church and all that. And a lot of it was kind of redundant to me because the stories I already knew for the most part, a lot of the basic Bible stories, which is interesting because in Catholicism, they don't shy away from the Old Testament. When I talk to Christians, it sounds like they really focus more on the New Testament, but they started us as little kids right up with book 1. And we went from Genesis to Exodus. I mean, and then we kind of hop around after that, but it was kind of the same thing. Like, they go more into detail of it. And I was in a class with maybe 10, 15 kids, and they would, review the stories. And I was not the only one asking questions of, are we sure, like, this is okay? This was the only way of getting people to understand, is that we just had to erase them all. And again, even the answers at Catechism where, well, they were bad, and it just needed to be done. And so when Catechism was done, it's maybe like half a year. Maybe you could equate it to like a semester of school. And the end of it all is, it ends with a confession, with your first confession. So as a little 8-year-old, they're preparing us for, all right, guys, like, you're going to go to talk to the priest. And at this point, I've been seeing the priest for 2-3 years. I've been going to this church, and I'm actually, I remember his name, Father Frank. He seemed like a really nice man, and my grandparents just seemed to love him and stuff like that. And so I was excited actually to talk to him, but I was nervous because I'm supposed to confess sins, and I'm like, I don't even know what to say. And so in preparing for that, I remember I asked my mom, like, well, what do I say? And she was like, well, do you feel like you've done anything? And I was, I couldn't think of anything, like something of like a sin. No, not really. And so she was like, well, whatever it is she said, she didn't really give me any ideas. And so I went in and I was like, you know what? I'm going to say I said a bad word. Let's sound something like it's believable that a little kid might let slip, and, just to get through it. The reward for finishing the confession was you finish your catechism and you get to take the Eucharist and the bread and the wine and all that good stuff. And so I went through the confession. It was very awkward. It was not where, like, I've seen at other Catholic churches where you're kind of like in a room and there's like a screen between you. I can't think of what it's called. I was sitting really in the chair just right in front of him. And it really took me back at how just, I don't know, for lack of a better word, kind of cold the priest was. Like, he didn't really look at me. He was kind of looking towards the ground. And it seemed like he was just, at the time I didn't have the words for it, but now, like, he was running on a script. And so I told him my sins were I had said a bad word and I had gotten into an argument with my sister, and he asked, are these the teachings of Jesus? And I said no. And then that was kind of it. He said whatever his blessing and prayer was, and then that was that. And when the catechism was over, of course they have like a mass. You know, there's a Sunday mass where they are acknowledging all the kids that have finished their catechism, and so I got to go up and take the Eucharist, the bread and wine, and it felt like an accomplishment. And I actually felt pretty good about it. I mean, I felt like I didn't really learn much. Everything was just review of things I kind of already knew. And when I had questions, they were left unanswered. And they were always questions of morality. Like the theology is like, okay, I got the theology, but I don't understand if this is really good. You guys are telling me it's good, but then it's always like, well, God works in mysterious ways and some strange stuff like that. My reward for finishing was I got my first Bible, like my first actual Bible. And so I'm like 8, 9 years old at most. And at this point, you know, I've been doing my prayers nightly, reading my Bible stories nightly. I even tried praying through the whole rosary, but that takes so long. I didn't finish. But I tried doing that on my own. And so, you know, I really tried, is what I'm trying to say, to get into the faith and be a part of it and understand it. And once I got my actual Bible and I realized, like, whoa, what we've been learning is a very watered down version of what's really in here. Because when I tried reading it, it was much harder, above my reading level. And to be honest, I had set it down and I felt like I've done my part, and that was kind of it, at least up until I was 8 or 9. And I mean, we still went to church regularly, but yeah, I didn't ever really read from there anymore.
Interesting. I know for the longest that, you know, only the educated, the priests and stuff would have access to reading this themselves. And obviously it was in Latin for a long time when you go back in history. But so you're now going into your teenage years. Well, real quick before we do, when you were 8 or 9, the Eucharist, they were giving you that was real wine, right? This wasn't grape juice.
Yeah, no, I think so, because it was the same it tasted the same every Sunday after that. You know, the one that we got from being, I'm pretty sure it was the same.
I think Catholics do give like children who are in the church real wine. I just ask because when you come from Protestant background, a lot of the churches will give you just grape juice.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that. Yeah, like a little cup or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some churches who even try to argue that none of the wine ever had real alcohol in it that Jesus drank, right? So you can get them away from getting tipsy. But you're moving up into your teenage years. You're still going to church, but you have too many questions that you're not really buying the whole package. Are you almost just going with the flow and accepting things as they are? But you have, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I was about 13, because I remember being in middle school at this point, and this is when my grandparents had moved out. And so the regular church, like Sunday church, kind of like faded away. My mom wasn't going as often, so we would go less, but my questions were getting much more complex because now I'm a little more rebellious. I'm older, and I'm really pushing for answers at this point. So like my godmother, you know, she's one of my tias. She's the lady, of course, who had me baptized and stuff. I remember asking my mom questions again about morality, and she was like, you should ask your Nina, your godmother, what she says, because she really knows the Bible better than me, and maybe she could answer your questions. And so I went and asked her the same questions I'd been asking the teachers of Catechism and my mom and my grandparents, of like, why does God have to, resort to such extreme measures for punishment for things that probably, if you could create the whole universe, should be no easy problem for you to solve. And so, her answer was pretty much the same. And I think it was something along the lines of, God works in mysterious ways, but he always has a plan, even for the people that he kills. Like, he has a plan for them, and it's going to work out in the better for them. And that really struck me, because it was at that point where I was like, all right, I've exhausted everything, my parents, my grandparents, and then they refer me to my my godmother, and she's telling me something that sounds just as crazy as what they're saying. And I'm I'm a very caring and empathetic person. I just always have been. And I to that answer started to really get me angry, to where, because now at this point I'm much more aware of the world and I'm aware of people suffering. And I come from a small family, where they're all very, at least to me, they were very devout, relatively Catholics. And as now that I'm getting older, I'm finding out dark secrets in my family of things that my mom has been through, things that my grandma's been through. And I'm finding out who did these things to them, and they're Christians or Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, well, what the heck? Like, how is it these people can go about hurting others, and like there's no, I mean, God didn't flood them. I mean, and where they're hurting each other. And and I started to get maybe a little philosophical about it, thinking like, so how does this work? People can commit crimes, they can go to prison, spend a whole lifetime in prison, but if at the end they find faith in Jesus, then they're forgiven. And that just doesn't sit right with me. And especially because the most important people in my family have suffered and been hurt by people who do these things. And I know that these are people who go to church. And even when I was a teenager, we would still go sometimes. And I started to just realize, like, people, they're putting up a front when they're here. They're coming in and they're hopping into character. And as soon as they're starting to leave, it's like they're different people.
How old were you when you started seeing things this way? I mean, were you already in your now 15, 16? Like you're starting to...
Oh, I was like in middle school still, like 13, 14 at most.
Okay.
Yeah, and I saw it in my own family, and that's what it started to bug me. Is I was like, you guys are also like them, like, because I would go to, like, for example, I had friends, we went to the same church, and from staying over at their house, just hanging out on weekends or whatnot, you kind of see how people's families are. And sometimes it's a little shocking because not everybody's family is like yours. And you realize that maybe they're more disorganized, or, just kind of, I don't know how else to say it, a little abusive. And it's just like, whoa, these are the people that I see at church. I didn't know your parents are like this. And I thought everybody was, trying to be a good, a good Christian and a person of love and forgiveness. And there's not that much forgiveness, apparently. And so, yeah.
What's kind of interesting is I'm sure we all along the path, many of us Christians who were young and tried to believe as much as we could. I was totally delusional. It's shocking to hear how clear your perception was and that you held on to this criticism. Whereas I would like self-delude myself to not think that way. I'd find a way to reason my way out of it and then let go of it. But I do remember those moments where I would think these things and then just put them in the closet in my mind and never have, like, try not to focus on them. And what's really funny is I'm already now not even a Christian, right? Running MythVision. And I'm at a scholar, Robin Faith Walsh's office doing a course. I'm a non-believer now, right? And I'm still learning levels to this perception you're pointing out that you already identified as a teenager. It's not like you had atheist content you're watching on YouTube or skeptical content. This is just intuitive, and you saw it. And what's interesting is I'm listening to her talk about the pneuma, Greek word for spirit. And she's describing how they understood that in Middle Platonism. But then she's also identifying its use in Paul's letters, which this is one of the head honchos, you know what I mean? Of this whole movement. And he's writing to a church he believes is filled with the Spirit of God that is supposed to empower them and produce the fruits of the Spirit. Love, kindness, all that, patience, you name it, all the list of the fruits of the Spirit, which, you can open your Bible and read. And then he comes across, a guy who's sleeping with his dad's wife. And then he comes across, and I thought to myself, I never thought about this, but it's like, that spirit that's supposed to live in the believers that go to the church, that are part of the body of Christ, isn't really empowering any of them to behave the way that the spirit is claimed to. So like, why are we pretending? We're playing make believe is what it seems like. And that perception came way later. And you're already seeing it in a sense, in a 12, 13, 14-year-old way, where you're seeing it every day around you, and you're questioning these things that I only really got that little grasp there when I heard her explain that. And I was like, damn, I never really thought about it. Like, even Paul's own church doesn't, clearly, it's so human. There's no real God behind these things in my mind. But anyway, I don't want to take away from what you have to share here.
Yeah. And why I think I was like that is, my mom raised me with moral, like she really pounded it in, like, you need to be somebody with morals and values. And she wasn't doing it from like a religious stance, but I think, to be honest with you, she was trying to make sure I didn't turn out like basically like my dad. And so those morals and values, simple things like just, caring for others, think of other people and how they feel, put yourself in their shoes, and just have love for people and forgiveness. And as a little kid, since I didn't really have a male role model, and my grandfather, when he was around, he's a truck driver, so I would see him once every couple of weeks for a few days. I found myself gravitating a lot to comic books and superheroes, and so those were my male role models. And so I was like, hold on, like I'm super into Spider-Man and Superman, let's say, and I'm like, these guys are being more altruistic and true to their morals than when I go open my Bible and read it, and so I think at that point I was starting to notice the lack of true morality, particularly in the Old Testament, when I would go back to those stories and I'd be like, this is just crazy, absolutely crazy, that this is the benevolent, all-loving God. And it just reads almost like a horror story compared to what I was reading, when I would open up, whether I was watching cartoons or comics of superheroes. And so it just didn't make sense. And so I think that had, to be honest, a lot to do with it, was the foundation of morals that my mom put in me, and me searching for a male role model and finding that in like comic books and fictional characters. Yeah.
I can relate to that. When I became a Calvinist, I moved from a prior free will explained the problem, so when you get, why would he do it? Well, he gave us free will, that excuse that we hear, as if God he can't do that, or he doesn't love you if he messes with your free will. There's a lot of stuff God does against people's free will all throughout the New Testament, Old Testament, including drowning everyone, as you described. He definitely disrupted their free will with that. But I remember reading like God loves everyone, and I believed that for a long time. But then when I got to this new theology under this new church, I had to explain like how God's predestined people for heaven and hell. So it was this. You probably didn't have the same issue with Catholicism because they don't really teach us that much in there. But there was this idea at this moment where I'm like a young adult, and I'm thinking to myself, I love certain people that God predestined to hell, for all I know. I love them because it says broad is the path, many go to destruction, right? And only like narrow path to heaven, And I'm thinking to myself, I love certain people more than God, because God predestined certain people for damnation. And it's like, how can I love someone more than God?
Right.
And it really hit me because someone might go, you don't love them more than God, in the audience who might be a Christian. It's like, well, hold on, dude. If you're a Calvinist and you do believe in the 5 points of Calvinism, which is a theological thing, God like literally predestines people for a place he built for destruction, and a place that he has, which is heaven, right? For glory and for people to enjoy. Like, he knew all along and planned and purposed that they would go to this place. You can't tell me that's love. I wouldn't plan that for anybody. So I know my love is greater for those people. And some of them I don't know, right, in my mind, who probably are going there, but I'm not sure who they might be. Um, how can I love them more than God does? And these are little like philosophical, ethical issues that I had as a believer that I share with what you're describing here. Is you had the comic books and your mom's foundation that she gave you, and that was just a little too good
Yeah.
for this Bronze Iron Age idea, that you're reading in
Mhm.
these texts.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. And that is, I've been kind of harping, I guess, on my problems with the Old Testament a lot. But as I got older and started thinking about, heaven and hell, that's one thing that really got me is like, okay, so if the key to heaven is faith in Jesus, and half this planet doesn't even believe in Jesus, what's going to happen to them? You know, and that's a lot of people going to hell, if that's how it works. And it got to the point where I was, oh man, I was, at this point I'd gotten older, 16, 17, and I had taken a break from going to church, maybe like 2, 3 years, and there was some things that were going on, like for example, my first girlfriend in high school, she had some really abusive parents. And her parents were extremely Catholic. Like I would say 10 out of 10 on the scale.
Hmm.
Um, and that really bugged me, hearing particularly in what her father would do to her mom and to her, and pretty much get away with it. Um, and I was like, you know what? If people like, and this might sound really harsh, but I was like, if people are like him are the ones getting into heaven, I'm not even sure I want to go to heaven. I might want to go with all the people that apparently don't qualify because they simply don't believe. Because I don't know if I want to believe in this crap anymore. You
And you're
know.
17, 18, you said, when you're starting to,
Mm-hmm.
or how, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was a junior or senior in high school, and yeah, that's when it really started to get to me because uh, it's just like, okay, everybody that in my life that I care about, you know, the people closest to me, my mom, my grandma, victimized, my girlfriend's being abused, and these are all by Christians or Catholics, and they're going to go to heaven because they simply believe and they don't have to um, actually do any work. Apparently, they don't feel they have to do any work on being a better person because their faith tells them that simply faith is enough.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, that really bugged me. And that was kind of like where I really started to pull away. But I did try to go back. I did. I tried to go back. I tried going with my grandma again because I wanted to feel that connection that people say that they felt. People say like, oh, I've talked to God and I've received blessings and this and that. And I'm like, I don't think I have. I don't think I've ever really felt that before. And I
Yeah.
really want to. I really do. Because it's what I've been raised in, it's what I've been around, and sometimes you kind of ask, or I would ask myself, like, is it me? Am I not doing enough? Am I not praying enough? Am I not going to church enough? Is it something that I'm missing? And it was, I don't know. It just when I went back to church, it just kind of confirmed my feelings of like, actually, I don't think I want to be a part of this anymore. Um, and I went to a different church too. It wasn't even the same one. It was a different one. It was a different Catholic church, and then I even tried going to a Christian church, and that was very different because
Yeah.
their mass is not structured like the Catholic church is. And but either way, both of them, because I don't know, this is just my experience that the Christian church that I went to, it was like it was like an auditorium. It wasn't
Mhm.
no longer a cathedral looking building. It was like an auditorium with like a stage. And it was just like, this feels more like a pep rally at high school than it feels like church to me. And so it was so weird and so different. But either way, it just felt like there was a facade there. And at that point, I just basically started to pull away. And yeah, I think, it did happen pretty early. I guess probably relatively compared to other people who have deconverted. But yeah, by the time I was 18 and I had graduated high school, I had pretty much stopped going.
Wow. So you wanted nothing more to do with the religion that you were born, raised in, and such. At that time, the people were just turning you off to the whole thing, and it just started to feel like a facade.
Yeah.
You're 18, 19, graduating high school. It's been a decade or a little over a decade since then. Anything since graduating high school that you can recall? Did you start to I mean, look, you watched my channel, right? Which is kind of odd. It's odd that you came across my channel. In my mind, I'm like, okay, well, you gave it up 10 years ago. How did you come across my channel? Clearly you're watching something, or at least it interests you. So you're not going to the Catholic Church. What happened between graduating high school to where you are today? So let's start getting there.
Yeah. So I wasn't like atheist or agnostic per se after all that. I kind of would, depending on the day and how I was feeling, is how I would answer. But I kind of just wiped my hands with it. Like, you know what? If it is real, then whatever, it's real. But I'm not going to put any more effort into trying to figure this out or make sense of it. And as far as the theology goes, I'm like, I understand it really well. It's just, is this real? And at that point, I hadn't studied into anything else. I hadn't studied my way out of it yet. Um, but even if it was real, again, I was like, I don't know if I want to be a part of this. And so as the years went on after graduation, it really fell to the back of my mind. I had moved out. My family moved states. So I stayed in Texas. They moved to Nevada. And they didn't know that, I never declared or told them that I was no longer a believer, or that I never identified as Catholic anymore. So that was completely, like they had no awareness of that. And it was, oh man, probably in my 20s, where, because now I see my family every so often, like holidays and stuff like that. And when I would see them, they would bring up the Bible, or bring up whatever it is that they were listening to at that time. It was
Mm-hmm.
interesting because I was like, you guys have changed. You're no longer Catholic, for sure. It's not Catholicism that you guys are picking up on. It's like some new weird, I don't know what it is, but they would still talk to me about it. And I would just nod along, like, okay, I don't want to be confrontational about anything. And it didn't feel like I had any stake in it. And since I would only see them occasionally, I just, go along with it. And there's one night before a particular Thanksgiving. This is probably 5, 6 years ago now. And I'm staying up late. I'm on YouTube, and I like to watch. I've always watched videos regarding like conspiracy theories, aliens, UFOs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in my algorithm, after I finished a video, I can't remember what it was, but something came up, and I know you might find this funny because you'll know who it is for sure.
Okay.
Uh, there's a video of Billy Carson that's queued up next for me, and it's titled
Okay.
something like "Aliens in the Bible and the Sumerians," and I'm like, I should go to sleep. It's like midnight, but this sounds batshit crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
because I've heard that there's maybe weird little connections there, but I never looked into any of that. And so I watched the podcast. It's like an hour-long thing, and the dude blew my mind. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know that there was so many other texts, because I never bothered to look, because I was so turned off by Catholicism in my experience in the church and all that, it never even occurred to me to really look into things and read and see, what else is out there, and what, that other texts exist, and that other civilizations had similar stories. And at the end of the video, he said, don't believe what I say, research what I say. And I was like, okay, I will. And so I bought a couple books that he had mentioned, like the Nag Hammadi and the Atrahasis, and I can't remember, it's like two others. And I started with the Nag Hammadi, the Gnostic text, and immediately, of course, I was taken back that this is even a thing and that it exists. And
So he just even just introducing you, no matter who it is, because someone in the chat will just go, "Oh, now I don't have to listen to this young Andrew guy because he just went with a guy that we think is a conspiracy theorist." And and it's like, bro, I get what you're saying, and I don't want to cut you off. I want you to keep going, but I want to just say, I got introduced to this whole thing through Zeitgeist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a movie online called Zeitgeist, and it compares and parallels Jesus to all these other gods, but it like almost Xerox copy parallels, and it's in the conspiracy vein and all that kind of stuff. I was into it, and I was like, huh? And it really blew my mind. I didn't know that maybe they over exaggerated and didn't give all the accurate, very specific, source material wasn't perfect in terms of Zeitgeist, but it's interesting to hear how we get introduced to ideas, and there's still some truth to the things that those people are presenting. You may not follow everything that they say about it.
But no, of course not.
Yeah. So, okay, you're in Nag Hammadi. You can't even believe they exist. You're just like, how come I didn't even know this existed at all, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I didn't know that there was apocryphal texts. I didn't know that there was things left out. I didn't know that there was a whole council that was assembled to basically consolidate what we now call the Bible. Like there was so many things that they never taught me. And it felt like I was lied to be honest. And because they're aware of it. Somebody's got to be aware of it. These guys go to seminary school. So they're lying by omission if they're not directly lying. And so that really, that was the spark right there, where it was, oh man, I mean, it opened up the floodgates basically, from that one video. It's just crazy how YouTube works. You watch one video and then you get so many other things thrown your way. And it was through that, so many YouTube channels popped up, yours eventually being one of them, and so I actually, the first video I ever saw was you talking with Neil from Gnostic Informant about Jesus. And that was fascinating. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just scratching.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, and then upon reading all that, this is now in the year, oh man, this is like 2018, 2019-ish. And I go, I spend the holidays with my family. So I see them at Thanksgiving, and all of that's in the back of my mind as they're doing their thing where they talk to me about this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't even know. They don't even know how much they don't know. And I'm barely starting to find out how much they don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. And, then Christmas comes around. At this point, I've spent a couple of weeks kind of looking and watching. And now I'm like, oh my gosh. And it hit me so hard. I mean, like for somebody who'd never fully, because I was born and raised Catholic, but, I was never super, super hardcore into it. But I still had many sleepless nights just laying in bed being like, I can't believe the rabbit hole I'm going down right now and how much stuff there is and everything, because it was at that point, Derek, where like, I almost would have rathered it been true. You know what I mean? Like the whole theology and everything they had taught me, and that maybe I was the one missing something. Like I would have rather it have kind of been that than for me to find out that this whole thing is kind of built on a lot of lies, even if it's lies by omission, still, nonetheless, it's lies. And it's all to serve a purpose for, to push a theology and a belief system. And it just so happens to be something that's very controlling. And it's disruptful, to be honest with you, because the belief system, in my opinion, is very self-limiting. It says like, you'll never quite measure up. You're a sinner. You were born a sinner, and you'll pretty much always be a sinner. But the best you could do is put faith in Jesus. And, that's kind of like how I felt about it. And so reading about all this new stuff left me many sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, just going really like, what the hell? And as the years continued to go on and I started to learn a lot more, I would try to talk to people about it. because, I just feel like I need to talk. Like, I really need to talk to people, and I gotta say this stuff because it felt like I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. That, like, do people know? Am I the only one? Like, I see people on YouTube, and there's clearly other folks in the comments who are into this stuff, but, like, I don't know anybody else. I don't personally know anybody else. And so I tried talking to, first, we're engaged, but my girlfriend at the time about this stuff. And she comes from a family of, her parents, like, there's pastors on both sides of the family and missionaries. Like, her family's if we're putting them on the scale, 10 out of 10. And so I kind of try to talk to her about stuff, really mostly to vent, because it felt like I needed to.
Right.
And that's where it really, became a challenge for both of us, because it's like I need somebody to talk to, and I don't really have like anybody else really. I might have a small circle. I have very few friends, and that's not the kind of stuff that I would really lay on them. You know what I mean? And when I tried approaching this with my parents or my mom and like my grandparents, that's also where things get challenging and hard, because at this point, they during COVID discovered the internet and found, I guess, some new wave of Christian prophets that are online, and they're tying it into to politics, like current event politics, and they're saying that everything that's happening in politics is somehow tied to what's in the Bible. And to me, it sounds absolutely insane. And I try to listen to it all and be as patient as I can. And I think to myself, like, you know what? They'll come around. Like, eventually they'll see that there's no way. And we never quite got there to this day. It's been, of course, 5-6 years later, and it's put a strain on the family. It's really hard for me to see them like this, because if they had at least come out of it as happier, more peaceful, loving people, then okay. But that's not what it's done. It's made them more anxious and fearful and kind of like more judgmental. And they're absolutely convinced in so many ways they've got it all figured out. And so when I try to talk to them about things, and for a long time, I would just kind of sneak in a question of like, have you guys contemplated maybe you're wrong about this, or maybe that person's not what they say they are. And to make a long story short, it's fractured at the family. And at this point, where we used to talk weekly, I haven't talked to them in 2 months at least now.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been pretty hard, to be honest. Yeah.
Are they still in that circle of people thinking the prophets and connections to politics, the whole nine right now still?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That sucks. Yeah, I get where you're at, in terms of having a whole family that believes and thinks differently than you, and very few have even an interest in remotely talking about things, somewhat meeting you somewhere, right? Like clearly they can't talk the same language I'm talking, like I'm talking to you, or people that might share a similar outlook. But it's difficult. So I avoid the topic and try to focus on things that have nothing to do with that, at all.
Right.
It's just tough because even they can't help themselves, so it's like, okay, I'll just be quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, as far as you, I want to get to you in just a second to say you and your current relationship, obviously you both have different beliefs about things in the world. How is that working? Because, we're human. We need connection, and your family obviously and you aren't as close as you ever were before, but at least with your personal relationship right now with your fiance, how's that working out? Have you figured out how you guys are going to navigate that? And
yeah, so it's we've come a long way and had many, many difficult conversations. I mean, it has not been easy, for sure.
Yeah.
many late nights, and just you know, oh man, I don't even know where to really begin with it. I mean, yeah, it was hard, man. It's been so hard. But you
Yeah.
know, like the thing with it is like I'm not really here for beliefs, you know, and that's kind of like my angle on it is like I just want to know it's real and I just want to know it's true as much as I can. You know what I mean? Of course, there's some things that you can never know 100% for sure, but if you research into things, you'll find out that you can at least know what's not real. You know, even if you can't pinpoint exactly what something is, you can find out what something is not. And for her, it was challenging uh, because you know, like me, she was raised on it, and you know, her family was even more devout to it. But
Does your family have like sway in what she does or how she thinks about these things? I know she grew up with that, but I'm saying as far as in her life, like if her family knew you think the way you
oh
think
yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, so you know, we've been together now 5 years, so we've had a lot of time to work through things and talk through things, and it's been work. You know, it's been conversations, and I'm sure her parents know, you know, more or less where I'm at or where I'm coming from, and yes, they do have sway because I know I would say things like we would have a conversation, and you know, she would at a later time probably confide in her mom or her dad about it, and you know, they would reassure or something of
Right.
you know, the faith or the belief or whatnot, and then of course she would come back with it, and that might turn into a bit of a tug of war, a back and forth kind of thing. And it's not even like really like we were trying to be right fighters. It was more of like we're trying to come to a mutual understanding of each other and an acceptance. But the thing with me is it, regardless of talking about, you know, historical accuracy or anything, it's all really morality to me. And on the basis of morality, I just cannot. And I just needed her to understand that. Like, you know what, we don't gotta go down, you know, what's real, what's not real, what other else is there. But just understand that like just based on morality, I can't identify with it, and I'm not gonna pretend to. And we've kind of come to that agreement. And you know, I've you know, I don't, I'm not like I don't like hate the religion and try to be bashful or anything like that, you know, because it is my background, it's my family's background, it's many people's background, so I try to be as respectful about it as I can. But you know, the mutual understanding has been like, just know that based on morality, I can't.
Hmm.
And she's kind of come along, she's come towards my side a lot too because of the morality aspect of it, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's cool to find people who realize you don't have to agree on everything to live and to get along and things like that. Um, and yet you can still disagree, you know, on things. I think that's important. I figured to ask if you didn't mind going into it. I'm thankful you did. So as far as where you're at today, I figure we are right here. I think we're post, you know, COVID. I think a lot of us had too much time on our hands in the world, and so we're all on the internet, and that became our a lot of our introductions to
Mhm.
ideas we were never allowed to know. We weren't even allowed to know these things.
Yeah.
And then if, I know that a lot of the Christian apologists, their whole goal is to act like it was there all along and we weren't hiding it. The priests knew about it, the people in seminary
Yeah.
knew about it, but it wasn't necessary for you to know. And I feel like that sleight of hand is a bit, it's like, but you don't ever teach this. It's not like you take the time to really go and break all this down. You leave all this educated material for people in usually in seminaries where they are geared toward making sure you know the right conclusion, which is the one that leads you to faith, so that you go and teach this to other people and keep recycling the tradition. But you seem like me in the sense that you want to know and you need to know and you want to see behind the curtain. So
Absolutely.
where is Andrew at today? What's your life like? You know, what is it like for you today, and what do you think about all of this?
Well, I mean, it's been really cool because it felt like I found something that I was wanting and needing all along, and I didn't even know it. Um,
Hmm.
I have become such a reader again, and I have found so many topics because I've always loved history and the religious or I guess spiritual aspect of history and tracing it all back has just been really cool for me to learn. And I have been hitting it everywhere. I mean, I just reading like about Mesopotamian texts, Greek text, um, just taking all of it in as much as I can. Of course, as much as I can on my free time.
Right.
Whether it's books, audiobooks, YouTube channels. I mean, it really, for a while, it felt like an obsession. I felt like I've kind of simmered down because a lot of it has kind of come into place, and I feel like I've grasped so many things to where um, it felt like putting together a puzzle, really, of the history of the world, the history of our belief systems, the history of our people, and how going back, let's say, just from Rome to here. There's so many connections just from Rome to America to the United States now. And so putting all that in perspective, it has been enlightening and empowering, because I feel like I understand who we are and where we come from now so much better. And it's sad because the more like with my family, I kind of just wish I could just for a moment just put my brain in their head for a moment and just like download some information in there for them, be like, guys, I just wish you guys could just see the bigger picture here. Because when you're tied into the whether it's Catholics or whatever, like they really don't want you to look into anything. That's why everything else is evil. Everything else is evil. Anything that's a cult, considered a cult or esoteric, everything's evil. Everything's evil. And then you find out that it's not that simple. It's just not. And there's so much good information out there, and it's fascinating. It should be common knowledge, in my opinion. And it's a shame that it's been hidden, because it has been hidden.
Hmm.
There's clearly, when you start looking down the history of it all, there was a very, very uh, strong effort to make sure texts were hidden and buried and belief systems and people just wiped away. And somehow they've survived. And, I got to believe that's because, that they're meant to, it's our story. So.
Hmm. There's so much. You're still on a journey, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a lifelong thing now. It really does. I have so many books lined up and so many that I can't wait to get back to read them over again. And I love it. It's been super cool. And I
You
still
have more fun doing this now than you did when you were in the Catholic tradition, I
oh yeah,
imagine.
yeah, and even rereading the Bible now, because I
Yeah.
feel like I can reread it from so many different perspectives. Like rather than reading it through the narrow, rigid, theological, like Catholic lens that they pretty much give you, right? Because when
Hmm.
you're born and you're baptized and all that, it feels like they put your brain in a box, and they give you a set of glasses where you see the whole world through the eyes of a Catholic. But the more you learn, it feels like you can put on different lenses and new perspectives and actually perceive more and contemplate more on things. And that's what I've loved about reading everything and going back to the Bible. It's even more interesting to read it now.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm in love with it. I love learning all this stuff from a human standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Um, this has been fantastic, man. Is there anything you forgot to say before we move to super chats? Because if you have a question or a comment, feel free to super chat for our friend here, Andrew. Everyone in the chat, show Andrew some love. We got, we had, I don't know, over 200 at one point who were here hanging
Cool.
out, watching.
That's awesome.
And Yeah, man. And you're sharing your truth, your story, and people are going to relate. Lots of people will. Some are going to come in and be trolls. It's just the nature of YouTube, man.
It's
So
just the internet.
yeah, that's the internet. So what is there anything that you think you need to say that you forgot to say about your story or about this whole thing?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say just question everything and learn as much as you can. And and hopefully, and I'm sure most people already know this, viewers, but to anybody who doesn't, and this, like, if they're telling you not to learn about other things, that should be a red flag. And I can tell you from my personal experience, at least, that it is incredibly liberating. And yes, it's hard, it's challenging, it's going to maybe even be painful at times, but in the end, it's totally worth it, and you'll be all the better for it. Because knowledge really is power. It really is. And with that knowledge and all that comes like wisdom, and it just you're just better for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, couple supers here. Oh no, we got a new member in the house. Chris Stammen, 1952. Thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Really appreciate that. You'll have some videos you can go watch, early access. And of course, you get the special immortal symbol next to your name in the live chat, making you the chosen. I'm going to say it. I love my members more than the non-members. So if you want to go to heaven, I'm just kidding. Seriously, thank you so much for being a member of the YouTube channel. Solera Knight for being a member and the super chat. Thank you so much. Original sin does not appear in any Bible. Adam lived 930 years. Modern Christians live average 72 years. Kosher diets add 8 more years. I don't know about kosher diets, whether or not that's going to add 8 more years or not. But yeah, I don't know if original sin has anything to do with the length of Adam's. I would just say, yeah, he eventually dies. But I think this super chat came up when you were talking about how they were kind of like making you a sinner and you didn't know how to confess in your catechism and like all of this original sin crap. You know what I mean? And if you ask a Jew who studies their Hebrew Bible about original sin, they wouldn't frame it the way Christians do, that there's this genealogical passing along, or at least some wouldn't. You know, there might be various traditions. One might contradict the other. That, you know, like a sin of a father does not pass on to the son, you know, like you don't get this generational, that's in the Hebrew scriptures. So there are Jewish interpretations of Genesis that would say, no, it wasn't like this. Oh, now every, you know, descendant after that is inheriting this wicked sin, so to speak, as a original sin that you would get from like Augustine and stuff. But I think that's where that super chat comes from.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Thank you, Solera. Appreciate that support, man. I don't know what the question is there other than the kosher diet, which there's people who smoke cigarettes. I know it's probably rare, but who lived to 95, you know, like depends on the genetics and the person. I was interviewing a classicist recently on Roman history who said that the Romans would live, I can't remember the average Roman life, 60s, roughly max 70. And then Germanic people and others like Gaul and all that, he said they had a longer lifespan. Some of the people in different regions had like 15, 20 years on average, longer lifespans. Don't know why. Yeah. Don't know why. Yeah, all humans are born innocent. That's what Solera is saying. And you felt that. You didn't feel guilt. They were trying to tell you to feel guilty, right? Like,
yeah, and that's actually something that I've, through conversations had with people, is, are people inherently evil? And no, absolutely not.
Interesting. That doesn't mean we don't do evils, but just inherently. Yeah.
Yeah, like, are you born inherently bad? No, I don't think so.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, clearly someone will go, well, you have the nature to be able to perform evil deeds. You know what I mean? And they'll go down that path.
But I mean, you know.
Yeah, it just didn't seem to fit. And the way you painted the narrative, you're a kid. You're an innocent kid who's like, what? You know? And they're pushing this. trying to get you to believe it.
Yes, it's very confusing for sure, and
Yeah.
alarming. Yes.
Interesting.
And on that thing too, the wash the devil at thing. I haven't seen my Thea who said that in so long, but I just want to say I'm sure she was playing around, but it is a very dark humor that for sure made it an impression on me. And I mean, one of my earliest memories. Like it was made such an impression. I thought about it for years afterwards.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Even if the joke was a joke, right? You don't usually tell jokes unless there is some kind of idea behind it that would make it make sense. You see what I'm saying? So,
Yes.
so even if it's like we're just kidding, there's a sense in which no, they really are trying to cleanse you of some evil something.
Hmm.
There's a reason you need to be baptized because you're clearly born wicked, right?
Right.
And you need that sin to be cleansed and to be a child of God. So there's something to that, even if she was like, "Oh, we got to get the devil out of you." It's like,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
'cause I mean, they're a different generation. They were raised even more rigidly and strictly than I was. So that's something. In talking to them now, that I've realized is that we're all products of our experiences, and so yeah, that's why they're older, they've been in it longer, and that's why it's even more intense for them.
Yeah. One more question. We got a super
Sure.
chat here. I'm going to get to. That I was reminded of when your parents went to these modern online prophets that say everything happening in politics is prophesied in the Bible or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, have they rejected Catholicism now that they've moved
Yeah.
out of that?
Yeah,
Really?
they don't identify as Catholics anymore, and they will go as far as to even talk, trash about the Catholic Church and just the history of it all. But it's interesting because I will point out to them, be like, but you guys still, like, whether you identify as Christian or whatever, like 90% of it's all the same. I mean, for real, we're talking about very minimal differences. Uh, you can get into all the whatever between the denominations and this and that, but it doesn't really register with them that it's more similar than it is different.
Yeah.
It,
The,
yeah.
the scholars I talk to say that early Christianity, late first, early second century, was more diverse than
Hmm.
Mormonism is from regular Christianity. Like they were so different. Some of the sects had like 36 gods. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't even monotheistic in some senses. And like they were so different that Catholicism is very close to what a lot of these Protestant type Christians do believe in many ways. Sure, they
Hmm.
have saints, they have, Mary as someone they might speak to.
Hmm.
Um, stuff like that they go, that's idolatry. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sure you hear that.
Yes.
Um, Azupiru, thank you, or Azupiru, I guess. Thank you so much for the super chat. Do you still believe in free will? I rejected it.
Oh man, I think that's a great question. Uh, I do actually. I still believe in free will. If I'm going to speak freely about beliefs, absolutely, I do believe in free will. I think part of the story, if we're going to say the fruit, um, the fruit of knowledge and the knowledge of good and evil, and the free will is, the point is, you are to make your decision. you know what kind of person do you want to be, and that is for all of us to decide if we're going to act, if we want to make it as simple as, light and dark. If you want to be a person who lives in love and compassion and forgiveness, or if you want to be someone who lives, that's selfish and does whatever they need to get what they want, even if it means hurting others and taking others down in order to achieve whatever ambitions they're after. You know, so absolutely, I believe in free will, and I think all of us who make a choice, um, those choices have ripple effects, and that collectively, I think if collectively people choose to use their free will to make good choices, as far as doing good things and doing good to others, that we would have a much different world than we have now.
So I get where you're coming from. And as Azu Pyru says, but you are gods and choose to be like a god. Question mark. And I think this is related to the Genesis situation here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, I think I know what you're saying, what you're trying to say, and I think this philosophical issue, even if you didn't think free will was a real thing and you thought it was an illusion, that we have the illusion of choice, we still need to act on that, is the point. I think no matter what position you take, if you think that ultimately cause and effect and there's really not an agency of free will there, we have the illusion of choice that you need to make. And again, I think listening to the words you just described, act on them is the point. Act and do what's right, do what's good. And I think the way you interpreted that story was more symbolic of how are you going to be, you know what I mean, rather than real talking snake and all that.
Right. And so, yeah, because I mean, that's how I think of that story of humanity attaining the knowledge, is like, with the knowledge of good and evil, are you going to use the moral compass and the consciousness that you've gained to distinguish between them, and what path are you going to choose? That's how I think of it. That's just me, though. And so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Hey, man, you've been hanging out with me. Someone says send the homeless to the Vatican, right? You've been hanging out with me. I really am glad you came on here. If anyone has a question right now, super chat it, or so help you God, you aren't getting it. You aren't going to be able to get it answered here, because we're going to wrap things up here in just a moment. Andrew, you took us from your childhood. You've taken us up to today. You got really personal and opened up. If there's anybody out there that, is in your shoes, they haven't reached out yet, they said, hey, I've got a story, but I'm a little afraid or a little nervous about sharing my story. You were nervous. Admit it. You had to be a little nervous about this.
Absolutely I was. I was definitely nervous.
Yeah. Tell us about that. What was going on in your head over the past week? I mean, since we scheduled this and leading up to today, maybe you can help people understand that, how you leaped into the moment. And I explained to you, like, dude, I promise you, you're in good hands. We're okay. You know what I mean? Because that's a lot of people who are going to be thinking about this might be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. I mean, you've been very, very welcoming and made this very easy and cool. I was nervous, of course, in the weeks leading up. I had many moments where I was like, should I continue? Should I maybe bail out on this? Am I going to remember things? Am I going to get am I going to just stumble over my words? But it's, I'm glad I did it, and it's been cool to talk. Especially anybody else, I'm sure, who's considering doing this, they're probably a fan of your channel also. So it's really cool to be here talking with you. Yeah, it's been great, and I'm glad that I did it. If they are nervous for whatever reason, they have nothing to worry about. That's totally normal, being on camera and sharing these kinds of things. But once you're in it and you're going, at least for me, like, you're good. And
I told you. Yeah, I told you. Yeah. I'm thankful you had the courage to come share your story, to come talk about these things, open up, because a lot of people, I mean, I was watching comments, and there's going to be thousands of views in the coming days, probably within 12 hours. You know what I mean? You're going to have, several thousand people watching this, and they're going to relate in some way, even if they weren't Catholic. Someone's going to go, yeah, I connect to that. I know, I get what he's saying. Yeah. Even if it wasn't at the same age, they'll recognize what you're saying. And I told you before we went live, because I've had a few people, I feel like they've emailed, they've had to cancel certain, the streams, and I get it. There's a bit of fear, maybe potentially opening up about some things or going there. Does that make sense? And I want to encourage people, listen, it's not what you think in your head. It's not scary once you get going. We're chilling. Are we not? We're chilling right now, Andrew. We could talk about sports right now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
definitely.
Yeah. I just want to encourage them. Oh, Ricky Johnson, who, by the way, we're going to get his story in March the 3rd. I just set that bad boy up on the YouTube channel. In fact, let me take, if you don't mind, I'll take a moment here just to show people how much we have set up, what's coming, and you're just one of the guests that are going to be sharing their stories, of course. And you'll see double ups, because what YouTube's doing now is they're giving a vertical and a horizontal for each of the lives, which one's showing up on the phone, one's showing on there. I've got, I'm planning on doing one showing some of the sources I found in the Quran that seem to be, from earlier myths, legends, etc. He lost his faith, of course, studied his way out. I've got Jacob Berman coming up. I've got Planet Peterson coming up. I've got Brian Doak to talk about the Nephilim, the giants, which you might actually find interesting. The Rephaim, the Nephilim, the various giants that we find in the tradition in the Bible. Well, he goes into the ancient Near East and shows that.
Nice.
Justin Deconstruction Zone. We're going to get into prophecies that failed. Here is our friend Ricky, who just super chatted here. We're going to be getting Ricky's story. Dude, Jordan Peterson's Bible stories accidentally deconverted him.
Not what he intended.
Not what Jordan wanted, not what Ricky wanted, right? Jordan doesn't want that. Neither did Ricky, right? Well, Ricky ended up, going down the rabbit hole like you. So we have all sorts of Lloyd Evans is coming. I've got one coming up with Neil again. Hell was invented. I'm going to do that one myself. Jamin, he's coming on. He's got a hell of a story. I've got a few stories right now. H.G. Roberts, who wrote this book here on monsters and phantoms, he's coming on. His story, bro, when I tell you his story is deep and intense, like abuse. You could see this little child in the middle here. That's him. There was a man. I'll hint people. You got to subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. You got to stick around. And I don't want to tell his story. He's going to tell his story in greater depth. And this is just in a few days, 2 days from now. He was abused by somebody, and then he was abused by Christianity. Look, his abuser broke him at 7. Oh, his abuser broke him at 7. Christianity finished the job. That's going to be, an emotional one, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah, dude. So a lot of people are coming forward and giving their strength through the experience. This is no nonsense spirituality. Her channel's fascinating on TikTok. She's going to come on. We're going to talk about, how a lot of atheists have even gone so far. She's going to tell her story, right? But I hope to get into this conversation that once they left the religion, a lot of people became nihilistic and suicidal even. Like, what's the point? I have no purpose. Yeah. She wants to explain how you can have purpose, how you don't necessarily need to believe, but could find meaning and value and find what she would call spirituality, but it's not the woo-woo technically that we might have believed before. Tomorrow I got this one coming up. Who's this guy? I wonder who's that. Yep. So yeah. Anyways, a couple more super chats popped in while we were chit-chatting there. Podling Dan, good to see you. It's been a minute. A minute since you super chatted, I believe, or since you sent like a thing here. Member for 18 months. Been around for a while. Thanks for sharing your story. Derek, I would love to tell my story, especially about how I see cannabis plays a huge role in the Old Testament and even the New Testament. I'd be interested to hear what you found. I've got a couple people who think there's drugs in the Bible, and I'm skeptical. I'm not saying there aren't, but I'm skeptical on drawing those conclusions without really good reasons to do that. I mean, I know a lot of these people will look at like the Apocalypse of John and go, that's a crazy revelation and he's having visions and stuff. But I think it's a well-written, it's like fictional. It's a well-written, crafted revelation. I don't think that's because they're hallucinating. But I'd be curious to know where that is in the Bible. And thank you so much for that. Ricky Johnson, 7591 again says, thanks for sharing your story. Great job, Andrew.
Appreciate it, you guys.
Yeah. I hope that everyone who watches this will drop a comment in support, showing love and respect to Andrew, encouraging future guests, of course, who continue to come on and share their strength. Are there any final words from you, Andrew?
There was an upcoming video that you had. I can't remember her name, but it was one of the ladies that you said you're going to be talking to in a bit, and that she was going to be talking about people who have, I guess, going through the deconversion process and fall into nihilism or feeling hopeless, or maybe like going through an identity crisis. And I wanted to say, I think that's awesome that you're going to have her on there talking about it, because that is a huge part of it. I feel like I went through it in my own way. And anybody else who begins to have those doubts, that's definitely something that they go through. And it's hard. And depending on how much of it is their identity, it's even harder. And so I just wanted to say, I think that's really cool that she's going to be there talking about it, that you're going to have her on. And just thanks again, man, for having me on. It's been cool talking to you.
You as well, Andrew. It's been fantastic. Don't go anywhere. We'll wrap things up here. Okay. Thank you, everyone who's watching. Like, share this with a friend, comment after the stream, give that algorithm a boost. You can hype videos now. So if you watch my videos and you see the hype button, hype it. Subscribe. These are free ways. And if you want to support what we're doing, super chat during the live stream, get your name shout out, become a member of the channel, get early access to stuff, be special, and have symbols next to your name like the rest of these people who are members of the YouTube channel. It helps us out. It's not a much each month, of course. And I put a lot of work and effort into these edits to try and give you early release, or you could be a Patreon member, of course, and you could private message me, all that kind of stuff through Patreon and get early access. Anywho, thank you so much again, Andrew. Stick around.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Have a great evening.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland. And I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more.